The whole thing actually starts with me rolling backward down a highway ramp on a wrecked tire while some guy is jogging beside my door, hitting the window with the flat of his hand. Not yelling, not frantic, just keeping pace with this slow, steady rhythm like he'd practiced it before. I had 911 on the phone. I was trying to sound steady, which took more effort than I expected, because the van was shaking so much that my teeth were lightly tapping together. Every time the rim hit the pavement, the whole frame shuddered, and this guy, this stranger who had stepped out of the trees, was close enough that I could see the way the cold air fogged around his breath when he spoke. He kept saying, "Stop the car," like it was this simple misunderstanding. Like if I just pulled over, he could explain whatever he thought needed explaining. The weirdest part is how normal his tone was. You'd think someone chasing a reversing van might be out of breath or at least a little worked up, but he wasn't. He sounded like someone reminding a neighbor that they left their porch light on. I remember thinking in this very matter-of-fact way, all right, this is the situation now. Not scared, not panicked, just trying to make sense of it the same way you try to make sense of losing cell service during an important call. A kind of resigned confusion. And then I finally reached the bottom of the ramp, and the van's backward motion slowed, and I got a glimpse of the highway lights through the windshield. This soft, washed-out glow that felt a lot safer than the dark stretch behind me. That was the first moment I realized I was actually going to get out of that rest stop. But like I said, none of that was the beginning. By the time the reversing started, the night was already deep into its own story. To understand how I ended up there, I need to go back a little. I'd been on the road since early morning, one of those full-day drives that turn into a blur. I'd packed up my whole apartment the night before and slept maybe 4 hours on a half-deflated air mattress. The van was stuffed with everything I couldn't give away or throw out. Clothes, kitchen stuff, the mattress I slept on, a couple boxes of books I refused to part with even though they weighed way too much. It wasn't a fresh start or a symbolic journey or anything like that. It was just time to move. By late evening, the road felt endless. Just black asphalt and semi-trucks and the hum of the engine that I'd tuned out hours before. My eyes kept drying out in this uncomfortable, gritty way. You know that moment on a long drive where you blink and it feels like your whole body shudders? That's where I was. The next real town was still far. Too far. So when that little blue rest area sign appeared, I didn't overthink it. I took the exit because my body was basically making the decisions for me at that point. I pulled into this tiny rest stop tucked into a pocket of trees. Not the official kind with bathrooms and vending machines, just a small, cracked loop of pavement with 2 trash cans and a single lamp post. The light was this old yellow bulb that flickered every so often, just enough to draw your eye every time it dipped. The rest of the lot faded into shadow quickly, and the trees crowded the edges in a way that made the space feel smaller than it was. Something about it did feel off, but I was too tired to hold on to that thought. When you're exhausted, the brain stops having opinions. It just wants horizontal. So I locked the doors, pulled the curtains shut, and lay down in the back on the mattress. I didn't text anyone, didn't check the time, didn't think about anything. I just closed my eyes and was out. I don't know how long I slept. It couldn't have been more than a couple hours, but I woke up in this sudden, sharp way. No drifting, no confusion, just instant awareness. My eyes were open before my thoughts had caught up, and I was already hearing the sound that pulled me out of sleep. 2 men talking outside the van, not whispering, not hiding, just normal, low talking, but close. Close enough that it sounded like they were standing right beside me. "She's alone," one of them said. His voice had this casual certainty that made the whole thing worse. It wasn't curiosity. It was confirmation. The second man said, "You sure?" I stayed absolutely still. My breathing went shallow without me deciding to change it. I could feel my heartbeat, but not in the dramatic way movies show it. More like a pulse settling behind your ribs, waiting. My hand slid slowly along the mattress until it found my phone. I didn't lift it. I didn't want the glow from the screen giving me away. "The windows are covered," the first man said. "Can't see in." He said it like he was reassuring someone. He was standing inches from my head. Every instinct told me not to look, but my mind wanted to anchor the situation, to know where they were standing, what angle they were facing. So I lifted the curtain just the smallest amount, and there he was. His eye was already on the window, right there, looking directly back at me through the sliver, like he'd been staring at that exact spot, waiting for me to check. We held eye contact for maybe half a second. It wasn't long, but it felt long enough for me to understand something important. He wasn't surprised to see me. Then he dropped out of view. Not fast, like he was startled. Smooth, deliberate. The talking stopped. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It had this feeling to it, like the air was waiting to hear what I'd do next. After a few minutes, I finally moved. Carefully, slowly. I crawled up between the seats, slid into the driver's seat, and sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, trying to stay calm. The van felt darker inside than usual. My own reflection in the windshield looked unfamiliar. Wide-eyed, hair flattened on one side, jaw tight. I started the engine. The sound felt too loud in the quiet. I put the van in drive and eased forward, letting the tires crunch softly over the gravel. Halfway up the ramp, the van jerked hard. It was the kind of jolt that shakes your whole body. The steering wheel twisted. The front right end dropped, and I felt the thud, thud, thud of a ruined tire immediately. The dashboard threw a warning light at me. The smell of burning rubber hit a second later. I kept going. I don't know if that was bravery or denial, but I didn't stop to think about it. The van moved forward like it was limping. Then I heard movement in the trees. Not random rustling. Actual footsteps keeping pace with the incline. I didn't look. I just kept my hands on the wheel and watched the top of the ramp. And that's when he stepped out. The same man from the window. His clothes, his posture. All of it looked exactly like someone who'd had time to prepare for this. He didn't look startled by the van or by the lights. He walked toward my window with this relaxed confidence that didn't match the situation at all. He tapped lightly on the glass. "You've got a flat," he said. "I can fix it. No need to call anyone." I didn't respond. I didn't even look at him long. My focus was on staying on the ramp. "Just unlock the door," he added, like it was the most reasonable request. That was the moment I picked up my phone. His eyes followed the movement. He saw the screen light up, and something in his face shifted. Just a small tightening, like disappointment. "You don't need to do that," he said. But I was already on the call. When the dispatcher answered, I quietly said where I was and what was happening, and that someone was trying to get into my van. He heard everything. He hit the window, hard. The van shook, and then he pulled at the door handle, quick, testing motions, like he wanted to see how much resistance the lock had. The dispatcher told me to keep reversing if I could, so I shifted to reverse and let gravity carry me down the ramp. The rim screamed every time it touched pavement. The van jolted. My seatbelt dug into my shoulder, and he jogged alongside for a few steps, not in a rush, not losing breath, just pacing me with this steady, unnerving calm. Then he turned and slipped back into the trees. By the time I reached the bottom of the ramp, my nerves were catching up with me, but I still didn't panic. I think my brain was working on a delay, just trying to stay functional. I drove on the rim for what felt like a long time. The grinding noise was awful, like metal folding into itself. But the dispatcher kept talking to me, asking simple questions, reminding me that help was coming. That voice kept me grounded in a weird way. When I finally saw the police cruiser's lights ahead, it felt like coming up for air. I pulled onto the shoulder, turned off the engine, and stepped out. The officers were calm, almost used to situations like this. They asked me to repeat the basic details. They didn't ask the dramatic questions people expect. They wanted facts. How long I slept, whether the van had been locked, whether I saw another vehicle, whether either of the men had an accent or any distinguishing features. They went to check the rest area. When they came back, they had a piece of my tire in a bag. The cut was clean, straight, intentional. They didn't speculate. They didn't try to give me theories. They just made sure I got somewhere safe. One followed me to a motel and waited in the parking lot until I was checked in. It wasn't until I sat on the hotel bed that the whole night finally settled in my chest. Not in a dramatic way, just this slow, heavy understanding. People always ask what I think those men wanted. I honestly don't know. But that's not the part that bothers me. It's the time. They had time to walk around the van while I slept, time to talk about me like a task, time to cut the tire cleanly, time to position themselves so they'd know exactly when I'd struggle, time to wait for me to slow down on that incline. They weren't desperate. They weren't improvising. They were patient. That's the part that sticks with me. I still drive long distances. I still stop at rest areas sometimes. But I pick the ones with buildings, lights, and people who'd notice if something was off. I don't take the small ones tucked into the woods anymore. I don't assume quiet means safe. Sometimes, when I pass a dark pull-off like that one, I think about the moment I lifted the curtain and saw an eye already waiting. And when that memory comes back, I don't slow down. I keep driving. If you want more stories from out here, you can subscribe. And thank you for giving me the chance to tell you another one.